That is phase number one. Then from 1991 to the beginning of 21st century, 9/11 and all that. And the third phase comes after 9/11, when America's policies in the world start changing. So to begin with, when we talk of India's foreign policy, what had been its goal? As India became independent, we know that India had a lot of problems related to development, defense, finance, and most of the issues related to industrialization. That was a time when the government was looking at massive industrialization, and India's own capitalist class, Birla, Tata, did not have that much capital to invest. So here one option was the way Pakistan adopted, that you totally tie up with one country, like Pakistan tied up with America, and America took the policy of that we'll supply you all what you need. So Pakistan did not go for its own industrialization. India, on the contrary, was looking for founding its own infrastructure, and it did not want to submit to the conditions imposed by imperialist powers. So at that time, after the end of Second World War, so this is the phase one of India's foreign policy. In the phase one of India's foreign policy, we see that there are two superpowers. One is America and another is Russia. Russian Revolution, which took place in 1917, had provided massive industrial growth, and by the time of after 2 decades, Russia became very powerful, and to the extent that it was a major power which was responsible for defeat of German forces in Second World War. So that time Russia was encouraging many countries to undertake anti-colonial path. So what is colonial path? Colonial path is here, which was employed by England, France, Portugal, Holland, and many countries of the Europe in particular. So they had colonies, and they were much against giving independence to these colonies. They wanted to continue their economic domination in their regions. So I'm giving you the background of India's foreign policy. While India was under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, it was very clear that number one, we have to develop our own infrastructure, and number two, we are not going to tie up either with American superpower or with the Russian superpower. So there was a conflict. This I covered last time also. There was a conflict between these two superpowers to dominate the world. Second World War was over with the victory of allies, that is America, Britain, France. So it had won the war, and it had a very buoyant attitude at that particular time. So this is an imperialist camp, and this is the communist camp. Now let's not misunderstand the ideology of Karl Marx and the communist states, socialist states, as they developed later. Of course, there are a lot of things, I will not go into that, but you should know that Karl Marx had envisioned a ultra-democratic, commune-based society with equality and freedom. So in communist countries, some focus was there on equality, but freedom was done away. In the concept of Karl Marx, freedom and equality have to go hand in hand. So anyway, because of many compulsions, these socialist states, communist states did not pursue that equality and freedom together. So they pursued the path of industrial development and making the country strong at the cost of freedom. Anyway, so Russia comes up as one power, America comes up as another power. So this was a bipolar world. Bipolar world, and this I talked last time. There was a Second World War, which was between allies. Allies means, as I told you, and Axis powers. Axis powers means Germany and Japan. Now, after the war ended, there was no total peace, and that is called Cold War. Cold War means there is no direct armed interaction. There is no war with the arms, ammunition, but these are two antagonistic camps. Capitalist camp, which called itself free world, and communist camp, which called it socialist. Okay, so what to do? So the first phase of India's foreign policy related to at 3 points. Number one, how to deal with these two superpowers. So as we dealt with in the last time, I will not go into details of that. So Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru took the lead and organized the newly independent nations and the other ones into non-aligned group. So what was non-aligned group? Non-aligned means we will not toe the line either of America or of Russia. So they gradually, from 1955 Bandung to 1961 in Belgrade, they increased very big in number, and at one time maximum countries of the world were part of this non-aligned movement. The non-aligned movement, the basic point was not to support blindly any policy of these two forces. Now, this was at one level, at global level, where India made its stand clear, along with Indonesia, Egypt, Ghana, and Yugoslavia. India took the lead in organizing these nations. So this was a major step of India's foreign policy till 1990, one can say, till 1990. Now, during this period, there were two other things in foreign policy. One was dealing with our neighbor, Pakistan. Now, this is a big topic, and it has a lot to do with Kashmir, because Kashmir at that time was, when India got independence, Kashmir's Maharaja Hari Singh decided to remain independent. And Pakistan, seeing that Kashmir has a Muslim majority, it sent its tribals to take over Kashmir. But Kashmiri people, Kashmir's Maharaja, of course, wanted to remain independent. And under these circumstances, the leader of Kashmiri people, as represented in the National Conference, that leader was Sheikh Abdullah. Sheikh Abdullah knew that Pakistan's leadership is more on feudal lines. Feudal lines, now we understand, feudal lines. Here, a zamindari, feudal jagirdari prevails, and there are some feudal lords exploiting the poor peasants. Well, Sheikh Abdullah was impressed by the model where land is distributed to the tillers, partly socialist ideals of social welfare, and thirdly, the secular ideals as were very dominant in India at that time under the leadership of Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, Maulana Azad. So Sheikh Abdullah had more orientation towards India. This I will not go into detail. So in this, there was an agreement. Article 370 was brought in, Article 35A was brought in, Treaty of Accession, which has been recently abrogated. through the act, through the parliament. Now, so Indian Army went, and this was the first conflict with Pakistan at military level. So while dealing with Pakistan, this was a part of our foreign policy. 3 wars with Pakistan: 1947, 1965, 1971. This all is a part of our foreign policy, so we should know. So 1971 war, 1947 war, it remained indecisive, and there was a ceasefire. Pakistan occupied 1/3 of Kashmir, and the remaining 2/3 came with India. The matter was pending in United Nations, and Pakistan refused to withdraw its army despite the UN resolution which called for that. Why could Pakistan do that? Because though Pakistan was not militarily very strong, it was totally backed up by America, so it could do this non-compliance to the United Nations resolution. So this was war number 1 with Pakistan. So that status quo continues. 1/3 Kashmir with Pakistan, 2/3 with India, where Article 370 has been reduced, and a lot of civil rights have been curtailed. A lot of democratic rights have been curtailed on the side of Indian Kashmir. Pakistani Kashmir, anyway, one doesn't know, because Pakistan itself has been a military dictatorship all through. So how much democratic structure will be there in Kashmir, it remains to be seen. So I will not go into that. Second war with Pakistan took place in 1965. 1965. And Harshita is asking POK. So this 1/3 Kashmir which remained with Pakistan is called Pakistan Occupied Kashmir by us, and Pakistan calls it Azad Kashmir. We should know both the sides so that we can understand better. So Pakistan Occupied Kashmir and Kashmir as a part of India. So this Kashmiris got divided into 2 parts. I was coming to second war with Pakistan in 1965, which was on the western region, that was Ran of Kutch, in Kutch area. And this war actually ended in a sort of a balance. Nothing came out of it. Only thing is we lost our Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri because of this. That as the war broke out, Russia took the initiative to bring a settlement between India and Pakistan. So Russia called India's Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri and Pakistan's Field Marshal Ayub Khan, and they came to a particular settlement about the boundary dispute. Somehow, coincidentally, or by some other thing that is not sure to say, that night we lost Lal Bahadur Shastri, one of the great Prime Ministers of India. Now, so this is where we stand in the second war with Pakistan. And the third war took place in 1971. Now, in third war, which was between India and Pakistan, it was actually to help the Bangladeshi Mukti Bahini under the leadership of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. This is a very important lesson for us to learn here, because number 1, Pakistan came up in the name of Islam. Same Pakistan broke down into Pakistan and Bangladesh on the issue of language, on the issue of economic and political domination by the Western Pakistan. I must tell you here that when Pakistan was united, East Bengal and Pakistan, that 4 states of Pakistan, they were together, but Punjab was dominating. On the top of it, they decided to make Urdu as the national language of Pakistan. Now, funnily, Urdu is more common in India northern part of India, UP and other parts in particular, while in Pakistan, there is not a single state where Urdu is a dominant language. Punjab has Punjabis, Sindh has Sindhi, and Bengal has Bengali, but they wanted Urdu to be, because in formation of Pakistan, there were many people who were from India. That Indian Muslims, they were the Urdu speaking, and that's why they wanted Urdu to be the national language of Pakistan. And on that ground, and on other grounds also, East Pakistan saw a big rebellion. Pakistani army came from West Pakistan, and it trampled upon the Bangladeshis. Murders, loot, rapes, which usually happens in the military actions, that was to the extreme. And the fundamentalist elements in Bangladesh supported it. They said this for the sake of Islam, and on that ground, many of them supported it. Anyway, fortunately, under the cleverest leadership of Indira Gandhi, she knew taking on Pakistan also means taking on America, because America that time was solidly with Pakistan. So what did Indira Gandhi do? First, Indira Gandhi made the world aware as to what is happening in Bangladesh. She traveled Europe, she traveled other countries, made the people aware, and made up their mind that Bangladesh needs to be liberated, number one. Number two, she entered into a Indo-Russian treaty, Indian-Russian treaty. So Russia, as a powerful country, became part of the support of Indian structure. So that neutralized American domination. So with this, then Indian army, in a very clever move, it entered Dhaka, and 85,000 Pakistani army personnel surrendered to the Indian army, and this also gave birth to a new nation called Bangladesh, with Bengali as its language. And interestingly, even today, the national song of Bangladesh is Amar Sonar Bangladesh, written by the writer of our national song, Jana Gana Mana Adhinayak Jai, by Pavani is telling me, Rabindranath Tagore, absolutely Rabindranath Tagore. So this is 3 wars with Pakistan. Now, second was this border between India and China was not very well defined. So they were, when British left, there were a lot of confusions about it. Taking advantage of these confusions, India that time was focusing more on industrialization, education, communication, irrigation, and overall total development. And before this, India and China had come into agreement, which you should remember, which was called Panchsheel. Panchsheel. Panchsheel means these are the 5 principles. 5 principles means recognizing the sovereignty of each other, non-interference in each other's states, then helping each other in a friendly manner, having all types of exchange with each other, and promoting peace in the region. So on these grounds, Panchsheel came. So Pandit Nehru was under the impression that Chinese are serious about it. But China in 1962, suddenly, of course, not suddenly, there was some talk going on between External Affairs Ministry and China about the border dispute. And the war, as it broke out, China came down up to northeast frontier province. And as suddenly it came, with similar suddenness, it declared ceasefire and withdrew. Ceasefire and withdrew. So that was with China. And till last 2 years, the China Indo-China border remained peaceful. Of course, there were trade and other exchanges. China has its own with methods. But now last year, we saw close to large tract of area is occupied by China. And the reports are that they have built 2 villages in Arunachal Pradesh. So this is a big challenge for India's foreign policy, that with Pakistan, you have one confrontation. With China, you have another type of problem. And China is close to a superpower. And to deal with it, one has to go with caution. China goes to the extent of claiming that Arunachal Pradesh belongs to China, which needs to be resolved across the table without surrendering our territorial integrity. So these are the 3 major parts of India's foreign policy, which came up up to 1990. Now, why 1990-91 is a landmark? Because after this, Russia's status as superpower went down. So socialist system collapsed. And here, I must say, why Russian socialist system collapsed? The main reason, according to me, is that in socialist system, there is no market control of economic production. Now, in a capitalist system, market is the mechanism through which production is regulated. Now, so this could not take place in Russia. Secondly, the fondness for consumer goods, because we are one world. You can't keep bamboo curtain, iron curtain for long. So Russian people were very impressed by the consumer goods coming in the Western world. And they were sick of the long queues which they had to stand for collecting their rations, for collecting their basic necessities. And this led to first perestroika and glasnost, means restructuring of the system that did not work, and then it totally collapsed. And earlier Gorbachev was there. Following him, Yeltsin came, and then Russian Communist Party became sort of a dictatorial ruler. Earlier also dictatorship was there. Here dictatorship became very strong, and it started controlling most of the things and it adopted the path of globalization and market opening up its borders. But at the same time, Russia, which was called United States of Socialist Russia, Union of Soviet Socialist Russia, Union of Soviet Socialist Russia, it broke down. It broke down into many countries, and Russia emerged as the largest country, which is regarded as the inheritor of the USSR. Now, with the decline of USSR as a superpower, the bipolarity of the world stopped. And as the bipolarity stopped, there was a fragmentation. And along with this, I would like to mention 3 or 4 more factors which came in and which later on dictated the foreign policy of India. First thing which came, that now America became the sole superpower. Number 1. United States became the sole superpower, so one had to reorient one's strategies. India did not submit to it. India tried to ally with other countries like Brazil, Japan, France, Germany, to maintain a sort of a equilibrium balance. So that was number 1. Number 2, the global economy started being dominated more by the Western countries. And in this global economy, if you see what we call globalization, the Western corporates became much more stronger. And third, and the most damaging thing which happened, was promotion of fundamentalism. What is promotion of fundamentalism? It is, I must say, because this affects the global policy, At that time, as the earlier Russian army had occupied Afghanistan, and American army, its morale was very down because of its defeat in Vietnam War. So America, in order to confront the Soviet Union in the beginning, so first its aim was to confront Soviet Union, but in between Soviet Union collapsed. Now its second goal became to control the oil wealth of West Asia. To control the oil wealth of West Asia through Asian youth also, Asian youth themselves was the strategy of America. Now this strategy affected India's foreign policy to a large extent because through this policy, first Mujahideen, then Taliban, then Al-Qaeda, then IAS, and IAS. 5 I have mentioned. Mujahideen, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and IS. So these 5 fundamentalist Muslim groups came up, and in bringing them up, initially America spent $8,000 million and 7,000, they supplied them with 7,000 tons of armaments. And this became a big menace, due to which India had to reorient its foreign policy. It also started affecting India much more because now the terror groups located within Pakistan also started attacking India, like the worst of which was 27th November 2008, when Bombay was attacked, Mumbai was attacked, and in that few hundred people died, and also one of the great police officers, Hemant Karkare, also had to lose his life. So this bringing up of fundamentalist forces was initiated by America, and the central goal was to control the oil wealth. Here I am also must slightly go back into the first phase. Now we have come to the second phase, but first phase, one more point I would like to bring to your notice, and that was the formation of Israel. Now you all know that in Germany, when Hitler came up on the basis of fascist politics basically targeted Jews as the minorities, and it promoted the big corporate world. Targeting of minorities, promoting of the big corporate world, and along with that, suppression of the rights of working masses. So Germany came up with that, and many Jews had to leave Germany. But there were other set of people whom we call as Zionists. So what is the difference between Jew and Zionist? It is the same as Islam and Islamic fundamentalism, Islam and Islamism, Hinduism and politics in the name of Hinduism. So please try to understand the difference between religion as a code of conduct, religion as faith, religion as moral values. Here comes up religion as a cover for political goals. So Zionism is not to promote the principles of Jew. Yeah, Avinash has asked a good question. I will answer that. So, basically I was saying, as it comes up, Avinash is asking how fundamentalism will control the oil. So it is actually, fundamentalism was promoted through Al-Qaeda and others. If you know, after 9/11, when World Trade Center came down, 3,000 innocent people came down, and it gave a pretext. It gave a pretext to American army to attack Afghanistan. Then America went to attack Iraq and militarily control the West Asia. So how it benefits the control of oil? So these are the two things, and first I will come later. So first is this ideology which promoted Al-Qaeda types also entered in the political level, and that's why we are scared that Taliban has come into power in Afghanistan again. So we must distinguish between religion and politics in the name of religion. Religion and violence in the name of religion, these two things we should try to distinguish. So here, America made it first, of course, the question is not fully answered. First is that America tried to counter Russian army. So we are making a transition from phase 1 to phase 2. What is phase 1? Phase 1, there is a Russian superpower. So what is the phase 2? Russian socialist state collapses. So America's policy in promoting fundamentalism begins in phase 1 and continues till the phase 2. Now they want to control it. Now they want to withdraw. And that was like when you promote Al-Qaeda, the other type of things are going to happen. And that gave a pretext to America to attack those countries, to have military occupation of Iraq and other things. So ideologically, fundamentalism can be in any religion. Basically, when you become dominating, intolerant, violent, and imposing your interpretation of religion on the others. What is fundamentalism? You are intolerant. You try to impose your version of religion on everybody, and there is an abolition of rights of the weaker sections of society. Simultaneously, the big corporate goes up. Anyway, so that was one part now when we come to the second stage, India's foreign policy had to reorient. Now, what is the challenge? Challenge is you get raw material, raw oil from many of these Western countries, and there is a Pakistan-based terror groups, which was the worst attack on 27th November 2008. So how to reconcile this? India tried to maintain good relations with many of the oil zone countries, because ultimately it is oil which is a central economic factor in today's political scenario. So I will slightly go back into phase 1. I was talking of Zionism and Jews. Please distinguish between the two. So Zionists wanted to have a separate state. Going back to the mythological past, and Western powers also encourage it. Western powers, particularly now America and Britain, were in the command, and their formula was that oil is such a precious commodity. Oil is such a precious commodity. How can we leave oil under the control of Arabs? Under the control of Arabs. So actually, on this ground, they promoted formation of Israel. Formation of Israel was heavily supported by America and Britain. And with that, 14 lakh Palestinians, because the land belonged to Palestinians. So this part of the foreign policy we should remember. India took a very principled stand that Palestinians have a right on their own land. So gradually these Palestinians came to various countries, formed some groups, and it culminated in the formation of Palestinian Liberation Organization. Palestinian Liberation Organization was recognized by United Nations and also by India. So India had a very good relations with PLO, remember the name of Yasser Arafat. So Alka is saying, and that's the correct point, last few years, India is gradually slipping away from its unconditional and moral support to PLO into tilting towards Israel. Initially, Israel was regarded as an aggressor country, so that we have nothing to do with it. And we were supporting more of these exiled Palestinians who basically belong to that land. That Palestinians, I personally also feel that it is America's domination, and America wanted an ally in that area that was provided in the form of Israel. So that is the reason. And India's tilt toward Israel in last couple of decades is something for its own strategic interest, and probably one has to evaluate whether morally it is correct or not. So that I will leave to the judgment of people for their own this thing. And of course, whenever there are many exiles, 14 lakh Palestinians, if they're exiled, so some groups like Hamas also came up. Terrorism breeds whenever there is a gross amount of injustice. And Hamas, some people say, I'm not sure about it, that Hamas was also promoted by the Western powers in order to defame the Palestinian movement. Hamas is not the total, of course, now it is becoming very dominant, but its basic creed initially was to promote democracy and the interest of Palestinian people. Unfortunately, organizations like Hamas should never be promoted, should never be supported, but big powers have their own games. So this is second thing, so that in the oil zone, there is Israel, there is a occupation of American army of Iraq and Afghanistan, and later on now they withdrew from Afghanistan recently, bringing back Taliban into power, which is not a very welcome thing. So these, in the third phase now, after this, after particularly 1900 and after 2008, then America started having better relations, promoting relations with countries like France, Germany, Brazil, Japan, and lately also with China. Now, this is a need of the hour currently. Now, currently, the issues relate more than military. The issues relate more to finance, economy, and environmental problems. Fourth, the problems related to control on arms race and nuclear disarmament. So, of course, there are different oceans and people have their own boundaries. That also needs to be renegotiated. Global scene. India has to be the part of the global scene. I think there was, anyway, I think I'm back. So India has to be a part of the global scene, and most important things today are nuclear disarmament. There are so many nuclear armed countries who have nuclear bombs. So India as a peace-loving country has been generally the part of nuclear disarmament treaties. Now these treaties call upon the countries that number one, there should not be a first use of nuclear weapons by you. No first use is the title, no first use of the nuclear weapons. Number two, no promotion of nuclear armaments. And third is to gradually denuclearize the world. Because in nuclear war, nobody wins. Everybody loses. See, if there is a bomb dropped in Nagasaki, Hiroshima, its aftermath is felt even today. Somehow, Pavni is making a very correct point, which reminds me of my personal trip to Hiroshima Peace Museum. And these bombs which are dropped in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki at a small interval, they are one of the worst blots on human society, the type of damage it caused to the Japanese people, because of which now they are very sensitive about this issue. Now, and nuclear energy is such that it does not end. It has a half-life, it continues, and it cannot be destroyed easily. So nuclear weapon free world is what should be the aim. And as Japan has suffered, but Japan Peace Museum's videos, if you can see, you should see the Peace Museum's videos. In case they are available, I'm not sure. I saw that personally. I was lucky to get a chance to visit Japan and see that. And it really horrifies you as to what can be the shape of the world if nuclear weapons are used more and more. So today, before we end, today is our main concern about international policies. One is, of course, we have to keep negotiating with Pakistan. But Pakistan that way is not that big a power. India is a much bigger power, and India showed it to Pakistan in 1971 also, as to how the Indian Army and the leadership went ahead to create a new state. The major worrying point today in foreign policy is to negotiate with China. China has its very strong military, nuclear weapons, and it is on the hillside. Always war on the hills are difficult for those who live in the plains. So Chinese army living on the hills, Indian army more used to the ground level warfare. So that is a problem. And at global level, I think India's foreign policy aims have to be today to promote its economic development. Unfortunately, our industrialization is going down, and more corporate sector is entering into the industries which came up as public property and were meant for public welfare at large, like railways, if you see. And this has also to do with the type of globalization and the privatization ideology which is coming up all over the world. So under that influence, that particular thing does affect the type of things which are happening in our country. So lastly, I will try to say that this third period which we are seeing today from 2008 onwards, it has more to do now with economic diplomacy. Economic diplomacy is very important. Currency, dollar is, incidentally, I remember somebody promised that dollar will become equivalent to 1 rupee. I don't think it is possible, but what is wrong in dreaming? What is wrong in dreaming? So yen, euro, and Chinese currency, these are the three leading currency apart from dollars in the world. Now, the next issue comes about UN membership. And recently, of course, in UN Security Council, one seat, India, of course, was elected for that. So that was very important. Now, socio-religious balance is also equally important, because as I said, that fundamentalism, which was promoted to madrasa training in Pakistan, few madrasa training in Pakistan, supported by American syllabus and American money, that has created a sort of a cancerous thinking in the world. And that affects our lives also. And as they call in Hindi, खरबूजे को देखकर खरबूजा रंग बदलता है, means one fundamentalism promotes another one. And that fundamentalism is totally counter to the interest of the average people in the society. So today, in the international scene, India is relatively stable. it has got a relative neutrality, and it is definitely a dominant power in South Asia. In between, I must say one thing we should remember, and that is that there was a very great experiment in Europe, and that was all the European countries decided to undo their visa policies, that you don't need visa to go from Italy to France or Germany, and they floated a currency called euro. So nations coming together, abolishing the boundaries, weakening the boundaries, was a great experiment in Europe. Now, of course, it is slightly receding. Why I'm saying so? Because it cuts down on your military expenses, number one. Number two, it encourages exchange, educational, health, cultural, between the different countries, which is a strong strength for different countries. In South Asia also, you have to remember that India's policy was to encourage SAARC, South Asian region countries. They formed an association, and that SAARC is not much heard of today, but SAARC was a very positive thing where people in the South Asia could go easily, comparatively easily, get the visas and access to markets. So that needs to be developed more. So in my own opinion, I think SAARC experiment is one which India should emphasize, because India is a great market. India can be a great producer. India has a great educational infrastructure. India has a great health infrastructure through which it can not only develop its financial clout, financial strength, but also be of help to other member countries of SAARC. So this SAARC one should remember. And lastly, I will say that India today has that way achieved a great thing by having 129 physical missions in different countries. So which is quite an achievement, that we are directly related to 129 countries, where either we have ambassadors or we have high commissioners. And as somebody was saying, how important is India joining nuclear suppliers group. So that way, India has achieved a lot in nuclear production also. Its Bhabha Atomic Research Center and other reactors have done a lot job. So first, of course, we should talk of denuclearization, nuclear free world, and whatever is there, nuclear energy should be used more for energy supply. Today, nuclear energy is used more for armaments, but our aim should be to use it for energy purposes, which will give us, as Alka is pointing out, clean energy. But only thing is, safety considerations for such things are very important to remember. So always remember that in Russia, there was a big accident of in nuclear energy in Chernobyl. And that, so nuclear energy, to use nuclear energy is also not very safe. In between, I forgot to mention one thing. In 1999, that Pakistani army occupied Kargil, and Indian army had a great amount of difficulty in evacuating them. And fortunately, due to American intervention, finally, this Pakistani army could be evacuated. So in sum and substance, today, recently, our Prime Minister had been to this clean air, environmental clean air conference, looking at ecological disasters, because one way wars have been killing us. Now, if we don't take care of our environment will not let us survive beyond a point. Ecology, that global warming is a big threat. Already we are saying that, yes, Pavni, COP26, that meeting, and this ecology disaster, global warming is already manifesting in rains, uncontrolled rains, unprecedented rains in different parts of the country, and that in a way can be great danger to us. So finally, we can say that India's foreign policy goals have to revolve more around its sovereignty, cooperation with neighboring states, controlling the ecological aspects, and improving trade and commercial relations with different countries of the world, and to help in achieving a world where the boundaries are less strong and where the human interaction between different countries promotes betterment of most of the people of the society, of the country, of the world. So with this, I think I will take some of your questions in case you have any, because I have tried to I try to give in foreign policy. One is this non-alignment, which we had discussed earlier. Second is the 3 phases of India's foreign policy up to 1990, and up to 1990, then up to 2008, and 2008 onwards. Then relations with Pakistan, relations with China, then SAARC experiment, and lately the major concerns of India's foreign policy related to ecology, economy, finance, and trade. And it is of course, the world cannot remain so narrowed down, and we see that because of India's great churning out of software manpower, India's software professionals dominate in different parts of the world, UK, US, West Asia, and similarly in West Asia, when we want to make any policies, also remember that if we have good relations, you remember earlier times, many of the times Indians had to be evacuated from those lands, and in that good relations should work. Alka has a question. I'll take her question.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So I have one question that, so there's many a times India faces this situation diplomatically where they have to choose between currently like USA and Russia. So as we all know that S-400 is being supplied from Russia now, and USA is there is a threat of USA sanctioning India due to that. So what steps and what diplomatically what the Indian government is thinking in that way, like क्या कर सकते हैं इस ऐसे सिचुएशन में, क्या करते हैं इंडिया क्या कर रही है. और फिर जैसे इजराइल और पैलेस्टीनियन वाला इशू भी है कि जहाँ पे दो लोग मतलब 2 स्टेट्स के बीच में चूज करना है, तो वहां पे क्या डिप्लोमेसी फॉलो करती है इंडिया सर ऐसे situations
में? In diplomacy, generally they go by realism, and so far we must say that we have been able to improve relations with US during last decade or so. But when the crunch point comes, we can't go for confrontation with America or Russia, and that way some means through negotiations can be achieved. And with Biden coming to America, I'm sure that America's foreign policy towards India, America's overall interest towards India will be much softer. Like in Trump's time, such sanctions and all that, he could talk very loosely. But I am sure with Biden coming in, things will not be that rabid. Rabid is a word one can use for people like Trump, who were very blunt and unconcerned about things. Now, as far as Israel and Palestine is concerned, I think we should go for moral stand, supporting Palestinians' rights, because we can't be too selfish just thinking about our own interest. Israel's technology and mainly that all very cruel techniques of military and these things, this is what we want to have from Israel, which I think is not that important. Not that important. More important is that we have good relations with the West Asian countries so that our oil supplies can flow in, our manpower can go there for work, earn the money, send back home. That I think should be our policies in promoting our better relations with West Asia, because you must be knowing in Gulf countries, the major soft power, in the sense intellectual manpower, is coming from India itself. So that's a remarkable feat which has to be achieved. So we have to keep that in mind while talking of Israel and Palestine. And many of the countries in West Asia definitely are quite sympathetic to Palestinian cause, and supporting the Palestinian cause will definitely elevate our moral stature in West Asia. Any other questions? Hope I could make the point, and you can pick up these more points. I have not written much in on foreign policy, but there is a lot of material available in foreign policy, and you can follow those things in preparation for your exam. So with this, I take leave of you. Look forward to see you again for the next lecture, whenever that is scheduled. Thank you very much, and see you again.